Welcome to Module 3, Emotional Balance. Emotions are messy. They're complicated, confusing, and constantly changing. We don't tend to like this, and societies define them into positive and negative, good and bad. For example, we tend to see anger and anxiety, fear and sadness as the more negative, bad feelings that we need to stop. And the positive, good feelings like happiness, excitement, contentment are all the feelings we're chasing. Society telling us find happiness, be happy. It's a difficult one to maintain all of the time. All feelings are valid and normal. But what if emotions feel unbalanced, where one dominates over others, such as anxiety and stress? This three-system model that we're going to talk about now was developed by Paul Gilbert, who's the founder of compassion-focused therapy. It's called the emotional regulation system, and it's really useful in helping us to understand how and why our emotions can feel out of balance. Any sort of mental ill health is affected by an imbalance or an overuse of one system over another. So we need to be aware of what these states are and when we are in them and how to balance and nurture all three. Valuing these three different states, the drive state, threat state and soothe state, and balancing them out helps us create a sense of overall well-being. So let's look a bit deeper at all these three states. When we're in the threat state, like what we spoke about in a previous module, so the action of scanning and reacting to danger, whether that's real or perceived. So the response is the fight, flight or freeze, with a motivation that it's better safe than sorry. Chemicals released are adrenaline and cortisol. Now, being in this state of threat is helpful when there's an emergency now that requires action. It's not so helpful when there's not an emergency now that doesn't require immediate action. So if you think about when you're in this threat state, a lot of the time when we're feeling anxiety, we're in a constant state of threat, whether that's real or perceived. So we're not saying this state is unhelpful and that we shouldn't ever be in it, but we tend to be in it too much of the time when we don't need to be. So let's next look at the drive state. Now, when we're in this state, we are focused on achieving goals, getting things done, pursuing an accomplishment, success, likes, or status. So think about a time when you post something on social media and you get lots of likes, or you complete your to-do list. It releases that chemical dopamine, that feel-good, short-lived burst of dopamine. And the drive state's motivation is for achievement and resources. And it's very helpful when there's a problem to solve, to achieve a positive state, and to get resources that we need, such as money for our house, food, bills, etc. It's not so helpful when there's not a problem to be solved, when you feel this uncomfortable emotions, and in times of uncertainty, where you can't fix something or get in full control of the situation. So have a think about times when you're functioning in that drive system, and maybe when that can become out of balance. So the next one is soothe. Now the function of that soothe state is caregiving and receiving, safety, nurture and support, giving our mind and body rest, encouragement and compassion. The motivation behind this state is to rest and digest. It's an important part of our health and well-being. It's about connecting with the needs of ourselves and of others. We all need to feel cared for, to feel soothed and safe, to feel supported. And the chemicals that are released in this state is oxytocin, known as the love hormone, and opiates, which is our body's natural painkiller. So this state is helpful when we're feeling difficult emotions, to feel connected and cared for, and for when our body and mind needs rest. It's not so helpful when there's immediate danger that requires the adrenaline response. So how do we balance these systems? The first thing is awareness and practice noticing from what system you're currently operating from. Are you in the threat state, the drive state, or the soothe state? And the state you're in now, is it helpful? If not, what system needs to come into balance here? An example of noticing and balancing. I notice I'm operating in the threat system. I feel my body being fueled with adrenaline. I'm thinking of a scary situation. I feel anxious. I want to escape. Ask yourself, is this an emergency where I am in danger right now? Do I need help from the drive part to problem solve, break it down, get advice? Or is it an uncertainty or discomfort I need to soothe? For example, talk to a friend, do relaxing breathing, or listen to music. So this is the key part. Notice what system you're operating from. Ask yourself if that system you're operating in is helpful, and what would be more helpful. So how to choose a helpful response? Remind yourself, all parts of me are trying to help in their own way. So these three separate parts of our mind have different agendas, different motivations, and different emotions attached to them. And they all have a positive intention to help you. However, they're not always needed. So the key part is directing your mind the way to follow. Asking yourself, what is most helpful now? And do I need any support with this? So this is where we add in the Calm Mind tools to keep increasing awareness, understanding, and the skills to refocus our mind on what is most helpful. So in summary, we have 3 internal states that have different motivations. All parts can be helpful. Being aware of how we use these systems is important to achieve more effective coping and improved well-being. We can learn how to balance and use these parts to our advantage. Now complete the task sheet and give yourself a good amount of time to really go through it, getting a real sense of these states and applying it to your personal experiences is a really key part of building the skills in emotional balance. So now this module's completed, and next we're going to be moving on to grounding and soothing.